So number 13, of course you dulped, right, Spence?
Yeah.
Yeah, so 35 degrees is about like that, 25 meters per second, and the angle is 35. Hopefully this first bit is becoming automatic. Is it a projectile? Say yes.
Yes.
Well, then I would go like this, I would go like this, I would go like this, I would go like that, I would go horizontal is 0, vertical is negative 9.8. Check. Is it at an angle?
Yeah.
Well, then I would go d. I would say that's Vx. D. I would say that's Vy initial. I would say to myself, why did I put initial on the y and not the x? Because the y is changing, although the x isn't, and I want to reinforce that. I might even, if I was really clever, remember that Vy is, I think it's going to be sine. I think I can go Vy initial is going to be 25 sine 35. And again, Kyle, you can survive without that because I showed you how to just derive it. If you do go hypotenuse, opposite, and adjacent, you will find that Vy ends up being sine. Which I guess means, what's Vx? Which trig function? Of course it is. And you'll notice this time, you know what? I'm not even going to bother evaluating that because I have a feeling typing a 2, a 5, a sine, a 3, and a 5. That's 5 characters. That's as much work as typing 5 sig figs. So I've just decided I'm going to type that every time rather than even bother evaluating it. Just decided that now. Now, you notice I haven't read the question. What does the question want?
The maximum height.
Maximum what?
Height.
Maximum what?
Height.
Maximum what?
Height.
Height. Would that suggest vertical or horizontal? So now I'm going to go here, and I'm going to think to myself, okay, I guess they want me to find a vertical height. Another word for maximum height is a 3-letter word that begins with letter T, ends in letter P. Top. Okay. I know something at the top. I don't know. I've never been on the top. I've never been at the top. I've always been down below. Spencer, someday, I'm telling you, you'll be on top of your game. You will. Help me out here. What else do I know at the top? And this is the key to solving this question.
Vf is also 0.
And I got to be fussy, not V final, Vy final, because it's still moving sideways, and that's okay. I'm looking for an equation that has V final, V initial, A, and D in it. And because this is all I'm being asked to find, I'm now going to use the whole space. I'm going to answer it all down here instead of just staying in the vertical column just because I want to fit this all on one page. Is it Vf squared equals Vi squared plus 2AD? And by the way, if you can't find the equations yet, you're in trouble. You then need to practice. One of the skills you got to get, you don't have to memorize them, but you got to know where they are and be able to figure out which one we're going to use. Is it Vf squared equals Vi squared? In other words, I don't have time. I could maybe find it, but I don't have time, so I'm not going to pick an equation that has a t in it. So that nukes the d equals vit plus a half at squared, Delio. Bear with me for a moment. Could you get the d by itself in that equation?
Vf squared minus Vi squared plus divided by 2.
Remember how tough that seemed back in grade 11, and now hopefully it's like a comforting little massage or something. Oh, this is like a brain massage. Oh, and I'm just going to remind myself, Spencer, make sure vertical, make sure vertical, make sure vertical. It's going to be 0 squared minus 25 sine 35 squared. A little weird, but I can do that. All over 2 negative 9.8. Hopefully this will be good. Did you do this? Did you get?
Got mixed up with the numbers.
Oh, okay. 25 sine 35. Close off the sine. Close off the 25 squared. You know what? I'm going to do it this way. 25 sine 35. I'm going to go 0 minus answer button squared. That's less brackets to keep track of. Divided by 2 times negative 9.8. I was losing track of all my brackets, so. Hopefully, is the answer 10.5? Says that. Whew. Okay. Yay. Any others? Yep. Number 5, I think in today's lesson, I'm going to be doing one like number 5. So I'm going to gamble and see if after today's lesson you can figure it out. And if not, I'm going to help you later in class. Okay? And that's going to be my segue. Hey, we're going to move on to today's lesson. Lesson 6. Projectile motion, part 2. Some of this will be review because you're teenagers and repeating things is important. And then we're going to try and look at some of the weird ones. So when we launch an object into the air, we call it a projectile. It follows a parabolic trajectory, a parabola, which is one of the reasons you look at the parabola so much in math. We break each projectile's velocity into its vertical and horizontal components. Example 1. Break this velocity vector into its vertical and horizontal components. I don't care whether you use the stupid shortcut or whether you do this the long way. In other words, I have no problem if you go, that's Vx, that's Vy initial, and if you then go, hey, that's hypotenuse, that's opposite, that's adjacent, and if you then say, oh, Vx is cosine and Vy is sine, or Trav, if you happen to have in your brain some stupid physics teacher little chant that Vy is sine, and if you go straight to saying Vy is going to be 24 sine 36, and Vx is going to be 24 cos 36, I'm going to assume you can do it the long way or the short way. Is that okay? Which is going to be 24 cos 36, 19 point. Oh, since all this question wants me to do is find the components, I'll go to 3 sig figs because this is my final answer. So I'm going to go 19.4. Is this my final answer? Units, 19.4 what? Meters per second. And I have a good calculator, so I can just backspace and edit. Sine. 14.1 meters per second. If I launch something at an angle of 36 degrees above the horizontal with a velocity of 24 meters per second, that is exactly the same as moving 14.1 meters per second up, although you'll be slowing down right away, and constantly moving 19.4 meters per second sideways, horizontally. So, horizontal motion, here are the key ideas. This is our T-chart summarized for your studying. This is what you should hopefully already know. Vx is constant. This means that Ax is 0, which means that d equals VIT plus a half AT squared horizontally becomes just good old dx equals VXT. Yay! This means that if you know the time of flight, you can find the horizontal distance, also called the range. Or, if you're lucky, if it's cliff at an angle, which normally is yucky, if they instead give you the range, if they give you this distance, how would you get the t by itself? And no quadratic formula, done. I said you spend most of your time finding time. I fibbed a little bit, actually. If they give you the range, it's way easier. Vy changes, but Ay is constant, negative 9.8 meters per second squared. So d equals VIYT plus a half AT. Nothing cancels. Now, if you launch horizontally from a cliff, for a split second, Vi vertical is 0. And so if you launch horizontally, this will cancel, which means you don't need to pull out the quadratic formula. You can, but you can get the t by itself by going times by 2 divided by a square root. Little note, Spencer, at the top of its arc, what's Vy?
0.
Yeah. Spencer, does this mean that the total velocity is 0 at the top? Someone said yes and someone said no. So one of you is wrong. Convince me.
Vx is constant.
Okay. What it means is at the top, V total just equals Vx for a split second at the top. Everywhere else in the path, V total, the slanty, is made up of the horizontal component and whatever the vertical component is at that time. Also, if we start from ground level and end on ground level, then Vy initial equals negative Vy final. What goes up must come down. Last, if you're beginning from a vertical height, the ground is below you, which means your vertical displacement will be negative. Armed with that, and some rudimentary trig skills and some rudimentary math skills, we can now predict the future. We can predict where stuff will land, or how long it will take, or how high it will go. Mr. Dueck? Yeah? You said that projectiles travel in a parabolic path. Well, yeah. But I've seen some projectiles that kind of seem to wobble while they're in the air. That's a good point. Put your pencils down, look up. A projectile is launched from a 45-meter high cliff at an angle of 64 degrees with the horizontal and an initial velocity of 36 meters per second. Gulp. Let's draw a little picture since they didn't give us one. Here's our cliff. Here's the projectile. If you're drawing a picture, I encourage you, draw it big. You want to get this wrong? Do this. I guarantee you'll do something wonky with the trig. You will. Let's see what I can label. 45 meters high. Hey, I like that. Angle of 64 degrees with the horizontal. There's the horizontal. There's 64 degrees with the horizontal. Initial velocity of 36 meters per second. There. Okay, what does part A want me to find?
Part A wants you to find the range.
Any suggestions here? Yeah? More specific, any suggestions here? You're right, we're going to find time and then find the range. T-chart and components. Let's do that, and that way our question looks like we've started. So you know what, I'll do components first since I'm right up here. I'm going to go, oh, wait a minute. Hey, Dueck. Let's do my T-chart right here. I realized I didn't leave you guys much room, did I? That was kind of dumb. So I'm going to do my T-chart here. Here's horizontal. Here's vertical. What can I write under horizontal right away? And AY, negative 9.8. And let's do the components. There's VX. There's VY initial. What's VY? Oh, sine, you say? So I'm just going to go sine. Oh, hang on. Not just sine. It's 36. It's the hypotenuse times the sine of the angle. And this is going to be the hypotenuse times the cos of the angle. You can type that if you want as a decimal. I'm going to leave it for now. What else do I know? Yep. Technically a displacement, but I get distance and displacement mixed up all the time, so I'm good with that. And now I'm committed. I got 3 things in the vertical column. I'm going to find time vertically. Now, we come to our crossroads. I don't care if you use the quadratic formula, if you use d equals VIT plus a half AT squared, get the, make it equal to 0, and then bring the quadratic formula. I don't care if you find VY final and then use that to find time. Which one do you guys want me to do? Who wants me to do the quadratic formula method? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Who wants me to find VY final and use that to find time? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, okay, the VY final is outnumbered. Okay. So, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to include all this as vertical too. Sorry. I need to respace these, and I keep meaning to, and I keep forgetting to. All right. I'm going to use VY final squared equals V initial squared plus 2 AY dy. He already has, thanks. Oh, I want to get rid of squared. And now, when I use this method, what was the one tricky thing I had to remember at the very end? Do you guys remember? No? Okay, well, let's stumble into it. Vy final, it's going to hit the ground at 36 sine 64 squared plus 2 negative 9.8 negative 45 square root of that. Kyle, I'm going to be clever. I'm going to go 36 sine 64. And now I'm going to go that thing squared plus 2 times negative 9.8 times negative 45. You okay with that? One nice thing about having a good calculator. What the? Oh, what do I have to remember now? Square root. And why is this wrong? Because it is. Someone said it back there. Who said like? Oh, here. Yeah. Why? I have to add the negative. In fact, in my other class, I had a student say, oh yeah, because actually when you square root, it's plus or minus, which you should have learned in math. And this is one time I actually want the negative root, not the positive root, because that's what fits my physical situation. So my calculator says 43.9. I guess I'm going to go with 43.92 because everything keeps rounding up because of all those nines. So 43.92, but it's going to be negative. Equals negative 43.92. How's that help? Because now I can find time. Time is going to be VF minus VI over A. Except vertical, vertical, vertical. What's V final? Negative 43.92 minus. What's V initial? 36 sine 64. Right? Can you see okay, Kohei? Sorry, I'm writing a little small to fit this all in. All over. I'll zoom in a second. Negative 9.8. That's terribly messy. Maybe I can do a little better than that. That's a 3. That's an 8. And I'm going to go to my calculator. Bracket negative answer button. Haha. Minus 36 sine 64. Now this is how you can do it if, Max, you don't want to round off at all. Now I'm keeping, you know, a zillion, well, I think 100 sig figs is what most calculators go to. Divided by negative 9.8. If you used your quadratic solver, did you get 7.783? And I should have said some of you, if you want to use the quadratic, go ahead. Or here, you know what? 7.7833 seconds. Is that right? Yeah? Of course, that's not what they wanted. What were they actually asking me to find? Oh. But the nice thing is, whew, now I can get to this pretty easy. The range is just going to be Vxt. What happened to the half AT squared? And by the way, the reason I keep harping on this is the most common mistake. The number of, well, you know what? I got 2 blocks of Physics 12. I guarantee on the test there's going to be at least 2 kids who put the negative 9.8 into the horizontal. And I'll go crazy and make fun of them in a nice, loving teacher kind of way to kind of lovingly beat this out of them. But it's direction, direction, direction matters. Direction matters, direction matters. Be organized. Vx was, 36 cos 64. Times 7.7833. 36 cos 64 times, haha, answer button. Nice calculator. Is it still working?
Yeah.
Okay. Which buttons are
1 and 0.
1 and 0. Oh, you don't use those ever.
All the time.
That wouldn't annoy me. Do you get 120? Oh, is this the final answer? 123 meters. B. What's B asking me to find? Time. When? Did you say height? Vertical. Since I've dropped down, I'm going to quickly re-jot it. So I had Vy initial was 36 sine 64, Ay negative 9.8. Could I just divide this time in half? Kevin, you're right. You shook your head. Why not?
Because you're going
From a cliff. Now, if I was starting on the ground and ending on the ground, then the top is exactly halfway, and that's a great shortcut. Feel free. But now, in fact, you know what? I'm probably going down for longer than I was going up. I do know one thing. If I get an answer bigger than 7.78 seconds, I've screwed up because it can't take longer to get to the top than it took to hit the ground. Okay, so there's built-in error checks. Spencer, what else do I know at the top?
the V.
Yeah.
VFY.
I knew I could get you. I thought, oh, he'll get me that. Yeah, there you go. Vy final is 0, and they want T. Cool. I'm looking for an equation. Oh, I think we've seen this one like a lot in Physics 11. Let's get the T by itself because we can. I think it's going to be T equals Vf minus Vi over A vertical, vertical, vertical. 0 minus 36 sine 64 all over negative 9.8. Zero minus 36 sine 64. Close off the sine, close off the top, divided by negative 9.8. 3.3017, you know what, I'll write 3.30169. And then I'll go to 3 sig figs, which is going to be 3.30 seconds there. Oh, but they want me to find something else. What else do they want me to find?
Maximum height.
How high that? Oh, did you say height? Vertical. Height's, you know what? That's a distance, isn't it? So I've listed everything here, and I guess this is what I'm going to use for my time. So I'm looking for an equation. Please let it have a D in it. Oh, I think I can just use VIT plus a half AT squared, I think. I know A, negative 9.8. I know V initial, 36 sine 64. T is 3.30. Okay. So, what was it, Mr. Dueck? 36 sine 64 times answer button, T, plus a half times negative 9.8. You could have just made that a negative 4.9 because we kind of did that in the quadratic equation, times T squared. And my answer should say 98.4. Wait a minute. It doesn't say 98.4. But my answer key says 98. But my calculator says 53.4. What gives? What gives? Look at your picture and see if you can figure out what the issue is. Manny, speak to me. What was that? Since we're starting from a cliff, the universe didn't know that we started from a cliff. It's assuming we started from the ground. We are 53.4 meters above from where we started. Where do we start? So I'm going to say D equals, I'm going to write this, 53.4. Height equals, I'll go H, 53.4 plus 45, which I could probably do in my head, but, and there's where your 98.4 came from. Is that okay, Alex? What else can we do? C is tough. Did I leave you lots? No, man, I need to redo this handout and like leave way more space. Okay. What does C want me to find, Max? Velocity, check. When?
2.4 seconds.
By the way, am I on my way up or on my way down at 2.4 seconds? You should be able to figure it out. How do you know? Because when did I get to the top? So, you know, when in doubt, my rules are dulp and defic. I'm going to dulp. Now, if I'm on my way up, I think my velocity might look something like that. Could be steeper, could be shallower, but I'm telling you, it is pointy, slanty upwards. I drew it nice and big. Kyle, that's what they want me to find. Did I draw something slanty, angly? What else might I automatically now, as a habit, go to if I see something slanty with angles? Looking for a word that begins with letter C and rhymes with opponents. I think as soon as I do that, I'm also going to say, hey, this can be broken into, and I won't call Vy initial. I guess it's actually final. It's going to be at 2.4 seconds. Ooh! And I know one of these already, because one of these never changes. Which one is never going to be changing? So I'm going to put Vx equals, and that's going to be 36 of course it is, 64. If I knew Vy final, then it's just straight Pythagoras, SOHCAHTOA, Bob's your uncle, and away we go. I don't know, wait, Vy final. Or do I? Can I figure it out? Well, let's see. Let's think vertically. Got room over here. I said vertically. I guess AY is negative 9.8. Oh, and Vy initial was 36 sine. And by the way, if you had made that a decimal a while ago, if Amelia, you thought, go ahead, but I just realized that the amount of typing to type that or to write something to 5 or 6 sig figs was the same amount, and this is more accurate. So I said, you know what? I'll treat that as a number. I'll just keep rewriting it. Oh! I also know the time elapsed. Not 3.3, not 7.78. How much time are we talking about in this question? Is there a way I can find a final velocity given that? Hey, this is straight plug and chug. V final equals V initial plus AT. Is that okay, Dustin? Except look up Y, vertical, 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 vertical. See if I can fit this in. I think I can. Vy final is going to be 36 sine 64 plus negative 9.8 times 2.4. 36 sine 64 plus negative 9.8 times 2.4. After 2.4 seconds, we're going up. We're going up at a speed of 8.83. What if I'd gotten a negative answer? What would that tell me? We were on our way down. That might be, if I hadn't done part A and B, if they had just given me the 2.4 and I had no idea how long this was in the air for, I'd find Vy final, and then I'd draw my picture. If it was negative, I'd draw my slanty going down, If it was positive, I'd draw my slanty going up. But I'd still say, you know what? Here, instead of giving me the slanty and saying find the components, I'm going to find the components and use that to get the slanty. Cool! So if I hear you correctly, you're saying over here on this diagram, I can put, what was it? 8.8366? How can that help me find V? Are you telling me it's math 8? Really? Pythagoras? And then little math 10 to find theta? Because I think theta is going to be, woohoo, right there. All right, let's do the Pythagoras. V squared is going to be 36 cos 64 squared plus 8.8366 squared. I'm going to use my answer button. 36 cos 64 squared plus answer button squared, and then don't forget to square root 18.1. Is that what I have up there? I've covered up my answer, but is that what I wrote? Whew. There's the magnitude. V vector equals 18.1 meters per second at opposite, adjacent, tan again, which it's been most of the time. Tan theta equals 8.8366 opposite over 36 cos 64 adjacent. Opposite over 36 cos 64. I have to put the bottom in brackets because it's actually 36 times cosine, which means there's two things on the bottom. So I put a big uber bracket around them. Did I get that? I got 1, 2 open brackets, and I think we're right. I think we're right. Please tell me. Is it 29.2 degrees? 29 degrees. I guess I went to 2 sig figs. And I said to you guys last day, that's not north, straight up. We say above the horizontal, or Spencer, if Vy had ended up being negative and I was pointing down, I wouldn't say above the horizontal. You know what I would say instead? Below the horizontal. But I'll say above. I have several different versions of tests, and I know on at least one of them there is a question where I ask you to find a velocity somewhere in the middle of a projectile where you have to then find each component, although Vx you know because of cos it is, but you have to find each component, add them together tip to tail, use Pythagoras, and find theta. In other words, to me, this is now fair game. Ooh. Let's keep going. This is kind of fun. Get it all, Kev?
Yep.
You sure?
Yes.
Okay. You never looked up. You never even noticed, did you? It's like, you get it all? You get it all? I should do that during the earthquake drill. That would add to it, eh? Hey, what if the projectile is launched horizontally? There's one key idea. If we launch horizontally, what's the key idea in the vertical column? Yep. Sorry? Instead of speed, can you use the word that begins with the letter V? And instead of no, can you make that a number? Key idea, and this bugs kids. So I told you earlier that I think it was Travis who I picked on. I said, I know I got a couple of kids that are going to put the negative 9.8 into the horizontal equation. The other big mistake, kids are going to put that red V which is horizontal, they're going to put that into their vertical equation because they just don't like zero. I love zeros, man. It makes it easier. Stuff cancels. If you got if something's not zero, just be like, yay, woohoo. So far, whenever we've been doing a projectile question, what have we spent most of our time finding? Time. And I said to you something like, hey, if they give you the time, the question falls apart, like number 3. You know what I noticed in number 3? Did they give you the height? No. Did they give you the range? Did they give you the time? Oh, it's going to fall apart. Is it a projectile? Are there angles? Well, T-table. Components. Horizontal. Vertical. AX equals negative 9.8. Mr. Dueck. Silly you. AX equals 0. AY equals negative 9.8. Wow, can't believe I did that. Now, last time I nudged you into leaving Vx and Vy in their cosine and sine forms. Do you want me to do that again, or this time would you like to see it as a decimal number? Are you more comfortable with that? Okay, so let's make it a decimal. So I'm going to write Vx equals Vy initial equals Vy. So I'll write 20 sine 30, and you'll all crunch it on your calculator. I did it in my head. It should be 10. Double check me. It is it not? And Vx is going to be 20 cos 30. And I can do that one in my head, I think, because the cosine of 30 is 0.866, so it's going to be times 2, 16, 17 point... 17.22? I'm off. What is it? Am I off by a sig fig? 20 cos 30. 17.3. I forgot to carry the 1. Dueck. Yeah, and then a 0. That's 5 sig figs already. I mean, we can make it a, you know what? Let's put a 1 there because it's a, okay, fine. 17.321. All right. Trav, what's they asking me to find? That sounds vertical. Wait a minute, Mr. Dueck. You said we need 3 things. I only know 2 things. What haven't I written down that the question gave me? What's so nice about time? Which column does it go in? Ho, I have 3 things in either column. This is why I said if you know time, it falls apart. And I'm going to do one more thing. Look up, look up, look up, look up. We don't have an H on our formula sheet. Traditionally, what letter have we used for anything that resembled a displacement or a distance or a height? So I'm going to go D equals. I'm looking for an equation that has D, VI, A. This is straight plug and chug. It's going to be D equals VIT plus a half AT squared. Mr. Dueck, you left a lot of room for this question. What do you know that we don't know? Well, the really tricky part is going to be part C. But part B and part A are going to be pretty straightforward. It's going to be D equals 10 times 5.2 plus 0.5 negative 9.8 5.2 squared. What's the height? 10 times 5.2 is going to be 50.2. 4.9 times 5.2 negative, so it's going to be 25. You're going to get a negative answer. It's going to be around, and I'm going really rough guess, it's going to be roughly 90, negative 98, negative 102. Or am I totally off? What did you guys get? 80? Negative 80? Oh, I'm way off. Why am I so far off? 5.2 squared. You know what? Okay, the 0.2 made a bigger difference than I thought. Sorry, what'd we get? To 3 sig figs, please. Sorry, what? Negative 80.5? 0.5 or 0.6? What's after the 5? So is it a 5? Sorry, what, 8.5? Why negative? Well, this equation is giving us a vector answer, and we are ending up below from where we started from. Height is technically a scalar, so technically you could say there will be a question on your test where I ask you to find a height, and if you leave it negative, I'll be fine with that. It's just we never say, look at that building, it's negative 80 meters high. So that's all. Okay? But I won't take marks off. Clay, what's B want me to find?
Find the range.
That sounds horizontal. So it wants me to find this. You know what? I think I can go with that, can't I? Do I know Vx? 17.31. Do I know T? 5. As I said, if they give you time, the question falls apart. I left a lot of room for this, and I think what happened was I meant this blank page to be after this question up here, so we had more room. Note to self. I think I botched the formatting. Anyways, hey, I happen to have this stored on my calculator because I didn't bother typing the last one in. Anyways, times 5.2. You should get something around 90.1-ish. How much more am I getting? And we're doing the... Ooh, am I going to get through it all today? Because I want to hit the wall. No pun intended, but I do want to hit the wall. Okay, we might get through it today. We'll see. C. C. Dustin, what's C asking me to find?
Final velocity to projectile impact.
Okay, the impact velocity. Now, a lot of students want to say, isn't it 0? No, that's the Captain Obvious answer. That's the velocity after impact. I want the velocity right at impact. Dulp. I think the velocity when it hits the ground is going to look something like that. Could be steeper. I doubt it's shallower. It's a fairly high cliff. And I've noticed the longer an object falls, the steeper its arc gets. This is what they want me to find. I'll even call it V imp for impact. Is that slanty? What might that suggest that we should add or bring in or look at? Components. And this time I'm going to do it up here because it's going down. That would be Vx. That would be Vy. Oh, one of these I know because it never changes throughout the whole projectile. What is Vx, Clay? What was it? 17 point something, or am I going from?
Yeah, 17.321.
If you really wanted to, you could put the 35, was it 35 cos? 20 cos 30, you could write that there if you wanted to be really accurate. Is Vy 10? Am I going to put a 10 there? No, you know what? I think I can find it though. Because you know what? I know that Vy initial was 10, and I think what this is Vy final. Time was 5.2. A was negative 9.8. Can I find a final velocity with that information? Yeah. VI plus A, you know what, I'll write the formula down. I saw some of you going, huh? VI equals VF equals VI plus AT, vertical, vertical, vertical. So the vertical speed when it hits the ground is going to be 10 plus negative 9.8 times 5.2. Hits the ground. What's the negative telling me in my answer? It's going down. Okay. I'm not going to write a negative on my triangle, but I would have pointed the arrow down if I hadn't drawn the arrow pointing down already. 40.96. Now what? How can I find the magnitude of V impact? Pythagoras. Jason, in the interests of time, if you want to write it out, you can. But if you are good enough on your calculator and you've done Pythagoras so much over the past few days, you can go 17.321, whoop, wrong button, squared. Good enough on your calculator, Dueck. 40.96 squared. In your homework, if you think you can go straight to the answer, on a test, I would probably write it out. A squared plus B squared equals C squared square root. But I think we're going to get 44.5. At. Here's theta. By the way, how would I describe that one? Not above the horizontal, but that's going to be a below the horizontal. Clay, you the man. Which trig function? Again. So we can do a lot of prediction. And you know what? If our projectile was nice and dense and round like a cannonball, air resistance wouldn't change much anyway. We would be bang on. To be perfectly honest, even if it was a good solid rock that was fairly round, if you were on a cliff and you were trying to do some math in your head, this would work. You get 67 degrees? Whew! What else can we do? Oh, that was everything, yeah? That was A, B, and C? Check. I didn't hear, sorry? Oh, no, no, no. That is O for opposite. Sorry, good point. I should have labeled that better. That's why I change colors when I'm labeling the triangles, so you don't think they're actually part of the numbers. So opposite, adjacent, but there's the magnet. Yep. Good question.
At the end of like the final answer,
yeah.
The 44.5 has to be positive or can it be negative?
I think this 67 degrees below the horizontal, I think that contains any negative, because really slanty, it's arguable. And I don't think I would take marks off, but you'll notice it didn't pop out in the equation when you do the Pythagoras. You are going to get a positive answer. Yeah. So I'd say 44.5 degrees is the magnitude. Technically, if you said negative, negative below the horizontal would be above the horizontal.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't know if I'd be that fussy, but I'd, you know, give you the frowning of a lifetime. Number 4 is very, very similar to the question that we just did, except it's launched from the ground. There is an angle. I am going to go components. But instead of using a time of 5.2, it'd be that. Oh, you guys are dying, I can tell, and I want to give you 15 minutes to work on. You know what? I think what I'm going to do is I am going to go like this. So I'm going to pick up with number 4 and number 5. So number 5 is, it's a neat question because here I'm giving you one distance, a horizontal, and I'm saying find with what the velocity is that it hits the wall at. So I'm not letting it hit the ground. Now you're going to have to figure out, when does it hit the wall? It's a neat question. We can handle it, believe it or not. So I'm going to pause here. Can you take a look at the ultimate vector kinematics assignment, please? This puppy here. So this is due the day of the test. Can you look at the very, 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 very end, please? Specifically look at question number 33 with the little balloon. What you're going to notice whenever you get one of these big reviews is the last couple of questions are often labeled scholarship questions because there used to be a scholarship exam which was even nastier than the regular exam. These questions here would be A++ level. In other words, they would be not fair game on a test. Although once in a while I might say, actually this one's not too bad, it is, but barely. If you're trying to get like the 99 or the 100% in my course, you certainly can try these ones as well. Often they're not that tough if you're clever. If you see one thing or, I see that, then it falls apart. So just so that you know, 33 is a scholarship question. 34 isn't. 35, hey, that's hitting the wall. We're going to look at that next lesson as well. 36, I think, oh yeah. 12 marks, that means it was a scholarship question. And I did attach the answers. Most of my written questions, Spence, are going to be worth 7 marks, which actually works surprisingly nice for part marks. It means you get lots and lots of part marks. So in the old provincials, it was 7 marks for a written, 12 marks, or 10 marks for a scholarship question.